Over 1 million teachers use IXL in their classrooms every day for one reason. They love it. The gold standard teaching and learning solution, IXL provides thousands of instructional resources, actionable analytics, and assessments to increase teacher capacity and effectiveness. IXL takes the guesswork out of lesson planning with ready-made plans. Built-in engagement tools such as customizable competitions make learning fun for students. Dr. Trujillo, superintendent at Tuscan Unified School District, says this about IXL, quote, "For the teacher, IXL opens up the door to be a lot more effective and provide more differentiated instruction to the different subgroups of students in their class," end quote. Empower your teachers with the tools and insights they need to enhance instruction, all in one single, easy-to-use platform. Get started today at IXL.com.
You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke. Jen, it's the end of April, and this is a Monday Matters episode, so we get to kind of slow down and talk about our own learning and work. And I'm also really enjoying bringing some of the content from your newsletters to listeners. And so today, I wanted to talk about a recent post you did called Wayward Solutions. And if you don't mind, I know listeners can read this, but you're such a great storyteller, and I love how the story helps bring light to our practice. So do you mind kind of walking us through what inspired this post?
No, this is, I was actually on my couch an early Saturday morning, and I just had this memory, and it's a story I just love. So my brother is 4 years to the day younger than I am. And he grew up just as you would think a, tousled, energetic farm boy grows up. And there are always a lot of problems to solve on a farm, and every day, just like in school leadership, you wake up and you don't know what's going to happen. There might be a storm you didn't predict. There might be a change in grain prices. There might be a broken baler. There might be any number of things. And so one of the problems that was a recurring problem on our farm, we have one of those big 19th century bank barns, and we had sheep and cows on our farm, but primarily a hay farm. And so my dad, we would bale all this hay and fill the barn up, and then throughout the year sell it. Folks would come and buy the hay, or my dad would haul it to them, whatever. So the barn would be filled up with this gorgeous alfalfa Timothy hay, and pigeons are such a menace because they roost up in the rafters, and they actually have a very soothing, beautiful sound, but the entire time they are defecating, right? So then you have soiled product for people buying it. And so my dad one day got this great idea to solve this problem. My brother was about 8, and so he got him a BB gun, which is absolutely normal when living on a farm. And he said to my brother, "I need you to kill some of these pigeons. We got to control these pigeons. So I want you to go in the barn, and for every pigeon you kill, I'll give you a quarter." And my brother thought that was a great deal. He wanted the money. Now, fast forward a few months, and my dad owed my brother 75 cents, and he needed about $300 to replace the windows in the barn. Which shows you exactly how well that little experiment went. I called it bad math in the newsletter. But, my dad went to my brother. He said, "Son, you're just not ready for this. You've got terrible aim. We're not, deal revoked." And my brother didn't argue, so the idea was kind of abandoned. But years later, talking to my brother about this, a new little detail popped up. And my brother admitted, he said, "It's not that I had terrible aim, Dad." He said, I just couldn't kill him. I couldn't do it. And so my dad, laughed out loud and lesson learned. But I apply that directly to school leadership because so many times, again, problems pop up, right? And sometimes there's recurring problems. And one that seems so reasonable and so simple and so effective, we put the plan in place, and then we realize we've created other problems, or we didn't recognize the fragility of what was behind the problem. In this case, glass literally was behind it. So that's the funny story there about the pigeons.
Well, it's such a great introduction to the lessons that you're trying to get across in this post, Jen, because I think every listener out there can relate to a really great epiphany. Oh, I've got this awesome idea. Maybe I've just come back from a conference and I heard something else that someone else is doing, or I just read it in a book or heard it on Principal Matters, podcast. And so you might step in with a quick fix or an idea, but it's only sometimes later when we can reflect back on why it didn't work, or maybe why it did work. And so you break this down into a couple of categories. There are windows is the first one. Talk about that.
Yeah. So this is a reference to the fragility of some of the other systems that you might have in place in your school. So sometimes we put solutions into place and we don't think about things like teacher morale, or we don't think about the trust we might be putting in jeopardy from students. We don't think about maybe the impact or the hit that might be taken to school culture. Efficiency practices. Anytime you add a solution, you are creating something else. And so you might be creating a solution that really diminishes things that already are going well. And so you have to think, my metaphor here is the windows behind the problem. You've really got to see through that window and see what's pretty fragile there.
Well, I won't divulge confidentiality, but I was coaching with a leader this week who was talking about some changes within the district where they work, and a new leader who had come in to take on the head of the organization. And this person was just confiding in me that leader has lots of new ideas, lots of them, but isn't very interested in knowing what's happened before. And I think that's sometimes for any new leaders out there, especially anyone who may be transitioning as you step into the spring, and lots of new opportunities may be happening for you going into the next semester, whatever it looks like, before execution of your great new ideas, it's really important to understand the context of what's happened before. Now, I know that sometimes leaders get mandates from boards or from hiring committees that we want a change agent, and people say all kinds of things that they want. And it's important that you come in and take the action where action is necessary. But man, Jen, was it Stephen Covey who said, understand first before being understood?
Right.
And so if you don't stop and have that deep reflection on what is really going on here before I begin to apply solution, then you're going to be busting some windows.
Right. One of the things I love to go to my team and ask is, what am I not seeing? This seems so obvious to me. What am I not seeing? And that was again, let's play the metaphor. My dad never saw the windows, never saw them. He's like, let's just get rid of these dadgum pigeons, right? And then the second thing that's a reminder for me here is there has to be not necessarily full buy-in, but at least the heart to do it, right? My brother's like, I couldn't kill them. I couldn't kill the birds. And he's still that way, which we'll talk about in a minute. But, you have to ask yourself, is this thing I'm implementing, this idea, this solution, do we believe in it? Do I believe in it? And what happens if my team, my teachers, my school, my parents, whatever, don't buy the why, right? What do we do if the heart is not in it?
Jen, I think we could do a whole episode on that because, let's be really clear. I'll be really vulnerable. Some of the hardest things I think I had to manage as a leader were really good ideas that research supported, that the district supported, that our money we were investing was pouring into so we could make some changes. But then seeing the roadblock happen when all of the people that were investing in bringing it to teachers couldn't translate the belief. They could translate the practice. Like, this is the practice of what we need to do. But there was a gap between that practice and belief. And I remember in particular, I'm just going to be direct, PLCs. Mm-hmm. I remember when we were trying to implement some really strategic remediation practices, I kept saying to our leaders, my own fellow leaders, guys, we got to go to the conferences. We got to go through the training. We got to sit and get this like PD directly. When are we going to take our teachers? Because they're getting it from us and it's not translating the same way. And it was actually the year after I left, Jen, the principal who took my position was my former AP. And I reached out to her. I actually came up to do a visit, and I was asking how things were going. And she just smiled at me. She goes, "Oh, guess what? We got to do this summer." And I was like, "What?" She goes, "We got to take a whole group of teachers to PLC training." And one of my teachers walked straight up to me and said, and I'm just going to call his name out because he's a great author and provider of PD, but she said, one of my teachers walked straight up to me and said, "If you had just introduced me to Mike Mattis 3 years ago, I would have bought into this like immediately," because she got to sit in the room with somebody who could help her adapt the belief. And so I'm just saying that out loud, Jim, because who's ever listening to this can apply that however works for you. But best practice doesn't always translate into people's hearts being in it too. And I don't have the quick fix for that, but I'm so glad you said it.
Right. And you don't necessarily need to fix it, right? Sometimes this isn't a problem that needs fixed. It's more of a mindset. And to know what you would do if your team says, "No, I don't get it. I don't want to buy into that. I don't want to do it. I don't have the time. It's dumb," whatever. What is your response? Do you double down on the solution you have set your mind on, or do you say, "Okay, let's talk more about that"? And then, the essential question really is your solution more expensive, literally or figuratively, than the problem? And so, in this case, just to wrap up the metaphor with the pigeons, my father having to throw away 20 bales of hay a year was not great, but it sure was cheaper than $300 in windows every year, right? And so that is, in fact, what my dad did. He replaced the windows. He let the pigeons be. He made peace with the soiled hay. It was all fine. And he let my brother be the kind of person my brother is. And as I mentioned earlier, my brother lives in an area, hunting is huge. Like, it's one of those places they cancel school on the first day of deer hunting season. And my brother just still can't. He's just not the guy. And Will, I think you and I have talked about this. You're the guy who'd rather read in a deer stand than and that's fine. It's fine if you're the other kind of person. But my brother's like, if they can't see it coming, I can't do it. So you have to just think. You have to think.
What a great lesson. And yes, I am that guy that when I was growing up, my brothers and I, we hunted, but as I got older, they'd find me sitting up there reading a book or writing poetry because I was just like,
right. My brother said he used to get the pigeon in the crosshairs, and then he'd aim just a little bit higher, and the pigeons would all flap and make their what, and they'd flutter around and then they'd land. And so
my kids have a running joke that my mother also was very sympathetic to animals, and of course she grew up on a farm her whole life, so she, the realities of farm life, whether it's butchering chickens or whatever it is, but she would, the running joke was that if you had a bad day hunting, it's because Mom's prayers were answered, because she was actively praying you wouldn't get something. And so, now that grandkids are all hunting and my mom has passed, they'll make running jokes with each other. Certain people in the family, they don't tell, so they're not praying against their
That's great.
against their hunts. Well, listen, Principal Matters listeners, I know it's that time of the year where you are wrapping up so many responsibilities with staffing and master schedules and budgets, and you already got one foot firmly planted in next year and one firmly planted in finishing this one. And so as you think about solutions for next year, I just want to repeat Jen's lessons really quickly, which is there are windows and there has to be heart. And so just be aware of slowing down and recognizing those things that are affected by our choices and decisions. And then just recognize how important it is for us to be aware of the beliefs of the people that we're working with and slow down long enough to acknowledge those things, influence them where you can, or decide when it's best to just cut your costs and move on to the next thing and see how that works. So Jen, thank you for this post.
Thank you, everyone. I love that wrap up. It's just about being thoughtful and looking for what you're not seeing.
How can our friends stay connected with you this week in your resources, Jen?
Right. Check out my website, jenschwanke.com, and that's where you can find a place to subscribe to the newsletter and learn more about pigeons and soiled hay.
And you can find all of today's resources at williamdparker.com. And I'll just say this too, since we're coming to you here at the end of April. As you're thinking about next year and you are already thinking about PD with your teachers, your own growth, your own desire to get deeper in leadership, reach out to us, because Jen and I do a lot of work throughout the school year with leaders all across this listening audience, and then people that are in places as far flung as, I think you were in Oregon this week, Jen, at the time of this recording. And so we'd love to connect with you. Find free resources like this one at williamdparker.com. Subscribe for our free weekly newsletter, which contains bonus material, and also check out the links for Grow Academies, Masterminds, Executive Coaching, and Keynote presentations for my books, as well as for Principal Matters Associates. You can find out more under our speakers tab at williamdparker.com. Thank you for learning together, and thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.